The air shimmers with heat. It's the kind of dry, suffocating heat that only exists at the bottom of an open-pit mine, a man-made canyon carved into the earth, where the walls rise tier upon tier, blotting out the horizon. Dust hangs in the air like a ghost. Everything smells of diesel, ozone, and pulverized rock. And then, a sound. Not a rumble, a physical pressure wave, a low guttural growl that shakes the ground beneath your feet. It's a Caterpillar 797, more than 13 feet tall at the shoulder, 10 feet wide. A machine built not to drive, but to dominate. It rumbles forward with the slow, inevitable momentum of a tectonic plate. In its bed, a 100-ton excavator dumps a third load of shattered ore. The impact sends a deep, resonant boom through the steel frame. The massive truck squats, its suspension groaning, and then you hear it, a sharp hiss, the sound of compressed air escaping. But it's not a failure, it's a breath. The driver, high up in a cab that feels more like a cockpit, doesn't flinch. He checks his screens. The tire pressure readings hold steady. His tire, taller than a two-story house, each one a monolithic ring of black rubber, is carrying over 105,000 pounds, the weight of a fully loaded Boeing 737 concentrated on a single wheel. And yet, it does not burst, it does not shred. It simply rolls forward, pressing deep into the crushed rock, leaving a footprint wide enough to swallow a person whole. You've seen a truck tire blow out on a highway, the explosive decompression. The shreds of rubber flying like shrapnel. A failure at a fraction of this load is violent, catastrophic. So how is this possible? How does a thin membrane of rubber and fabric, essentially a balloon filled with air, withstand the brutality of a 500,000-pound truck grinding over razor-sharp granite? What secret lies within that black, oily surface that allows it to carry a skyscraper and keep going, day after day, in the worst conditions on Earth? Why don't these tires pop like an overstretched balloon? And what is the invisible threshold beyond which even they would betray their master? If you've ever been curious about the hidden physics that keep our world from collapsing under its own weight, this is one of those boundary points where engineering meets the impossible. Stick around. The answers are not what you expect. 4 hours earlier, the mining pit is still dark. A single floodlight throws harsh white beams across the maintenance yard, where a row of these tires stands like an art installation of giants. They are not yet mounted. They are being inspected. A technician moves slowly around the tire's curvature, running a gloved hand across its sidewall. He's not checking for pressure, he's searching for something almost invisible, a slight bulge, a razor cut, the ghost of a puncture. In this world, a tire is not just a part, it's a bank vault sealed with risk. Every hour of downtime costs tens of thousands of dollars. A catastrophic failure can cost a life. The routine is the first line of defense. The tire is lifted by a specialized monster of a machine, its manipulator arms clasping the rubber gently, almost tenderly. These are not the inflated donuts you see on a family car. They don't even feel like rubber in the traditional sense, more like a thick, warm composite. And here lies the first illusion. These tires are not simply filled with air. They are vessels of a carefully calibrated pressure that is surprisingly low. A passenger car tire runs at around 35 psi. A mining truck tire? Some run as low as 100 psi, pounds per square inch. Take that in. The weight they carry is over 100 times greater, but the internal air pressure is only 3 times higher. That doesn't add up, unless you understand that the air inside is not what's holding the weight. The weight is being held by the structure itself, and the air is merely a shape keeper. The technician completes his check. He logs the tire's serial number into a tablet. Every single one of these massive rings has its own life story, tracked across thousands of hours. In the cab of the truck, the driver will see a set of numbers on his digital display, the exact temperature and pressure of each tire, updated in real time. A slight rise in temperature as the day heats up is acceptable. A sudden spike, that's an alarm. That's the first whisper of a threat that has nothing to do with crushing weight. Because here's the terrifying truth. The weight itself is rarely the killer, it's the heat. The sun climbs over the pit's edge and the first shift begins. The truck moves into position beneath the loading shovel. Rocks the size of refrigerators tumble into its bed. The sound is deafening, a clatter of hardened steel and fragmented earth. The truck sinks into its suspension, the tires deforming visibly, the sidewalls bulging into a wide, stable footprint. And inside that rubber, At the molecular level, something begins to stir. A hidden war, a battle between pressure and friction. The real test isn't the first load, it's the 500th. That's where the secrets of the tire's survival truly hide. But for now, the machine rolls forward, seemingly indestructible, carrying its mountain toward the crusher, while the quiet countdown toward the invisible breaking point has already begun. The truck grinds forward, its engine a low subterranean growl that vibrates through the soles of the driver's boots. The bed is heaped with a black, jagged pyramid, and the tires compress into the whole road with a slow, groaning surrender. From a distance, the deformation is almost imperceptible. A slight flattening at the bottom, but up close, inside the rubber itself, chaos has already ignited. With every revolution of the wheel, the sidewall bulges as it enters the load zone, then springs back as it leaves contact with the ground. Flex, relax, flex, relax. 60 times a minute, 3,000 times an hour. This is not a one-time crush under 400 tons of ore. This is a relentless, rhythmic bending that digs into the very soul of the material. Rubber is not perfectly elastic. When you bend it, when you stretch it, the long polymer chains inside slide past each other, and they fight. They generate internal friction. A physicist would call it hysteresis. A pit mechanic would call it the heartbeat of an impending disaster. Imagine taking a thick metal paperclip and bending it back and forth, rapidly, without stopping. Within seconds, the metal at the bend becomes too hot to touch. That heat didn't come from an external flame. It came from the mechanical energy you poured into deforming the metal converted directly into heat. The same law of physics is at work inside the tire, on a monstrous scale. The energy that disappears from the truck's forward motion, that silent drain on horsepower, does not vanish. It transforms into thermal energy, trapped deep within the massive sandwich of rubber, steel belts, and carcass plies that make up the tire's body. The driver glances at the digital readout on his dashboard. Pressure, 105 pounds per square inch. Temperature, 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Normal, the cool morning air and the fresh nitrogen feel are still doing their job, but the numbers are ticking upward, slowly, invisibly. The truck climbs the pit ramp, and the tires are now baking under a midday sun that heats the black rubber surface to nearly 160 degrees. The external heat soaks inward, meeting the internal heat radiating outward from the flexing carcass. The tire devours the rock-strewn road, and the friction of the tread blocks scraping against granite adds another layer of thermal energy. Here lies the terrifying truth about a tire carrying 500 tons. The weight does not simply press down. The weight forces the tire to work as a continuous heat engine. If the heat cannot escape faster than it is generated, the tire cooks itself from the inside out. The pressurized nitrogen gets hotter, and its pressure climbs. The rubber compounds, so carefully engineered, begin to soften. The chemical bonds that glue the steel cords to the surrounding rubber turn to a sticky, weak paste. A tire that could easily carry the mountain of ore when cold becomes a time bomb when its core temperature crosses a critical threshold. Yet the tire does not explode, not immediately. Because the engineers who designed these giants understood hysteresis the way a watchmaker understands a mainspring. They built a heat sink into the tire itself. Tread depth. On a passenger car, you might have a quarter inch of rubber before you hit the belts. On a mining truck tire, the tread can be 4 to 5 inches thick. This enormous layer of rubber does more than resist cuts from razor-sharp rocks. It acts as a thermal buffer. The heat from the flexing carcass below has to travel through that thick, dense layer, losing energy to the air as surface radiation and convection. The tread is a sacrifice. It wears away slowly, millimeter by millimeter, absorbing and shedding heat with every ton-mile. But the heat still builds. By the end of a long shift, on a steep grade, the core temperature of a tire can stabilize at a point just below the danger zone, if everything is perfect. If the whole road is smooth, if the driver maintains a steady speed, if the tire pressure was set exactly to the load rating, one variable out of alignment, and the invisible war tips toward catastrophe. The driver hears a change in the hum of the tires, a subtle harmonic shift that a veteran ear can detect. The sidewall begins to ripple in a way that no gauge can measure. The countdown that began in the morning is now a raw, physical presence inside the rubber. But there is one more secret the tire holds, a design born from the mechanics of a child's toy. A principle that keeps it from turning into a fireball even when all else fails. And it's not the rubber, it's the very shape of the air inside. If you could freeze time and slice through a tire right at the moment it bears 500 tons, you would not see chaos. You would see an architectural miracle hiding in plain sight, an unbroken arch of compressed air, suspended inside a membrane of rubber and steel. The vertical weight from the truck's axle, that colossal downward force, does not simply push the sidewalls out like a squashed balloon. Instead, the load is funneled into a pure, elegant tension loop. And the secret to that loop is not a new compound or a thicker belt, it is the geometry of a child's toy. Think of a classic space hopper, the rubber ball with handles that a kid bounces across a driveway. You can jump on it, pummel it, land hard on the pavement, and it never bursts. The rubber skin merely holds the true structure inside, a sphere of pressurized air that distributes every impact evenly in all directions. A mining truck tire works on that exact principle, scaled up to an almost absurd degree. But instead of a sphere, the tire uses a torus, a continuous donut of air, so that every inch of the carcass becomes a curved arch, working in perfect compression and tension harmony. When the tread meets the ground, the tire's load does not concentrate at a single point. It spreads across a contact patch the size of a large dining table. At an inflation pressure of around 110 pounds per square inch, that patch can support 400,000 pounds of vertical load without the sidewalls ever buckling. The air inside pushes outward uniformly, pre-stressing the radial cords so they are always in traction. Just as the cables of a suspension bridge never feel bending, only pull, the cords inside a radial tire never fold. The vertical weight arcs through the ply lines and resolves into circumferential tension around the bead bundle. It is a self-stabilizing pneumatic volt. Now imagine that volt beginning to fail. If the air pressure drops by even a few percent, the arch collapses, the sidewall creases. That crease becomes a hinge, and every rotation flexes it violently, generating a spike of heat that can push the local temperature past the melting point of the inner liner. The rubber degrades in seconds. The tire does not explode from pressure, it implodes from loss of shape. The fireball that haunts every mine site is, at its core, a geometric collapse. So as the driver eases the massive truck up the final ramp toward the crusher, he is not just monitoring a temperature gauge. He is listening for any subtle change in the harmonic hum that signals the arch is still intact, that the air inside is holding its critical form. By now, the rubber on the tread surface is so hot you could fry an egg on it. Steam rises from the dampened haul road as droplets flash into vapor on contact. Yet the tire does not fail. Because the shape of the air inside is still a perfect continuous ring, no kink, no hinge, no flat spot. The child's toy principle, the bouncy, indestructible membrane, buys time. But even that elastic geometry has a limit. The more the internal air heats up, the more its pressure climbs, stretching the cords and altering the arch profile. The driver knows this. He has felt it before, a subtle loss of stability in the steering, a wandering that tells him the footprint is deforming. He tightens his grip on the wheel, watching the pit floor rise to meet him. The crusher apron comes into view, the ground flattening out. He will dump the load and the weight will vanish in an instant. But release is not the end of the danger. A sudden removal of load sends a stress wave through the arch, and the cords snap back like an unstrung bow. If the structure is already compromised, this is the moment the crease appears. Then, even with the load gone, the tire begins to eat itself on the return journey. The countdown is not over, it has merely entered its final, most deceptive phase. And this is where the tire reveals its most cunning defense, a system that has nothing to do with rubber or air shape. A ritual that begins before the truck stops moving, a deluge of water timed to the second, soaking the carcass so that the heat cannot follow the steel cords all the way to the bead. The driver sees a pressure gauge flicker on the dash. He reaches for a switch. The next 60 seconds will decide whether the tire sees another dawn. The switch is not a simple button. It is a guarded toggle, recessed into the overhead console, demanding a deliberate reach. The driver's gloved thumb finds the serrated edge and flicks it upward. Instantly, a dozen high-pressure nozzles embedded in the massive mudguard roar to life. A curtain of atomized water, cold from an insulated tank, blasts the tire's steaming sidewall and tread. The hiss is violent, a serpent's protest, as the liquid meets the nearly 300-degree surface. A cloud of white vapor erupts, engulfing the rear of the truck, and for a few seconds, the pit floor is lost in a geothermal fog. Inside the carcass, a thermal race is underway. The water does not just cool the surface, it creates a steep temperature gradient, pulling the accumulated heat outward through the thick rubber, away from the critical bead zone. That bead, a bundle of high-tensile steel wires wrapped in hard rubber, is the tire's only anchor to the rim. If heat migrates down the body cords and into that bundle, the rubber compound will begin to depolymerize, losing its grip on the steel. The bead will soften, and the tire will creep on the rim flange, a silent, undetectable movement that shaves off layers of rubber with every rotation, until one day, the entire assembly simply peels itself apart. The water must stop that migration. Now, the driver's eyes are locked on the tire pressure telemetry. The number was flickering higher, the air inside the arch expanding like a lung under panic. But as the water cascades, the graph steadies. Then it dips. The nitrogen molecules, which carry no oxygen to corrode the inner liner, slow their frantic dance. The pressure falls back into the safe band, a silent testament to why these tires inhale only pure nitrogen. Atmospheric air, with its unpredictable moisture and oxidation risk, would be a slow-acting poison inside this furnace. The nitrogen is inert, stable, and its coefficient of expansion is a known constant that the engineers have already baked into the safety margins. The steam clears. The driver now watches the infrared camera feed, a splotch of false color showing the tire's skin. The rim flange area glows a dull orange on the screen, but it is fading to yellow, then green. The thermal dam has held. The steel cords, those thousands of filaments wound at a precise 2-degree angle, have not been betrayed by their rubber matrix. The elastic arch, though momentarily thrown into a stress wave when the 900-ton load vanished, did not develop a standalone crease. The geometry, for this cycle at least, has forgiven the abuse. Yet the tire has not forgotten. Deep in its structure, at the molecular interface between brass-coated steel and sulfur cross-linked polymer, a few covalent bonds have snapped. There is no sound, no visible crack. It is an internal scar, measured in nanometers. One dump cycle has cost the tire perhaps 300 kilometers of its theoretical highway life. And the return journey is still ahead. The truck begins its empty haul back up the ramp. With the bed raised and the load gone, the center of gravity shifts, and the tire's footprint changes from a wide, load-flattened oval to a narrow ellipse. The sidewall, no longer bulging, relaxes into a taller, leaner arch. At this lower internal strain, the heat generation is far less brutal, but the water cooling has left the carcass chilled on the outside, while the inner liner is still warm. That thermal differential sets up a secondary stress as the rubber compounds contract at different rates, pulling on the cord layers. It is a gentle tug, an imperceptible twist that the nylon cap plies dampen with their shrink-wrapped embrace. The tire absorbs it. It is designed to eat such micro-traumas 100 times a day, for months on end. The pressure gauge holds steady. The driver listens to the rhythmic groan of the tread blocks slapping the graded gravel, a sound as familiar as his own heartbeat. He will reach the shovel at the top of the pit, receive another load, and begin the cycle again. The tire's greatest enemy is not the 500 tons pressing down. It is the number 500 expressed not as weight, but as repetitions, fatigue. And the defense against that enemy is not water, it is not nitrogen. It is something far more hidden, a secret buried in the geometry of the arch itself, a secret that can only be understood when you strip away the rubber and stare directly at the skeleton. A secret that will be told on the final shift home. The carcass beneath the rubber is not a random weave. It is a single, continuous steel cord, wound from bead to bead in an unbroken geodesic spiral. The tire is not a bag of air. It is a pre-stressed concrete dome rotating at speed. The air inside does not carry the load, it merely props the shape. The steel, angled precisely at the crown, carries it. 500 tons translates into pure tension along that cord, a force that tries to stretch it apart. But steel in tension is one of the strongest things in the universe. The tire does not bear weight. It hangs it from the top of the arch, like a suspension bridge bent into a circle. The driver kills the engine. Silence. The tire exhales a low metallic sigh as the last thermal stress dissipates into the cooling desert night. It is not a machine, it is a wound of steel, dreaming of the next load.